Welcome on to the next of our videos. Today we are talking all things ITB. It is one of the most frustrating injuries you can get as a runner, but we are joined by the coach, Coach Parry, today to talk all about what you can do to firstly avoid getting ITB, what you can do to treat ITB, and most importantly, what you can do when ITB strikes during a long run. We're also going to talk a little bit about strength training and some of the exercises and strength training routines that you can do to help you prevent getting ITB in the future. That's all coming up on today's video. Well, it's good to have you back, Coach. And today we're talking about ITB, the dreaded ITB, and what we can do to firstly avoid it, but what we can do to treat it when we've got it. Lindsay, before we get into sort of how to treat it and how to avoid it, can you give us, in layman's terms, what is ITB?
So ITB stands for iliotibial band syndrome. So you have a tendon which runs down the side of your leg and essentially, in the very layest terms, the end of the bum muscles, and runs all the way down the side of the leg and into the side of the knee. And on the side of the knee, we've got what's called a bursa, which is just a little bump, a fluid-filled sac, which that tendon runs over. And if for whatever reason that is too tight, that whole system is too tight, then the band catches on that bursa. It catches and flips and catches and flips from both sides as you bend and straighten your knee under pressure while it's on the ground. And that is ultimately what causes the pain and irritation as that bursa becomes inflamed and irritated.
And as a runner, is there anything we can do to prevent getting ITB?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have really strong glutes and you are nice and flexible in the hip, so if you've got a really good range of motion in the hip, so nice and flexible hamstrings, hip flexors in particular, because we spend so much of our days sitting, driving in cars, hip flexors tend to get tight, and then that is where it often starts from, because we start to get immobility in the hip, very slight turning in of the femur, which is the thigh bone, and that causes tightening up of the glutes, glute medius, and the tensor fasciae lata, which goes straight into the iliotibial band, and that is what tightens that system up and then causes it to catch. So having nice strong glutes will help to pull that femur out and into the right place that it's supposed to be in, and then obviously stretching and in particular stretching those hip flexors will then help you to have a really good, nice range of motion and take pressure off that whole system.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of strength programs, if you want to grab one, you can click on the link that's on the screen now. You can grab a free strength training program from our website that'll definitely help you strengthen those glutes. And then, Lindsay, what happens if in a training season you pick up ITB? Often we see it with a lot of guys and girls training for a race like Comrades, where as the mileage increases they start struggling with it. What can you do if you're in the middle of a big sort of training block and it starts flaring up?
Look, the good news is that rest hardly ever solves ITB. It's what we call a low-level inflammatory condition. In other words, the only time you feel it is when you're running. And so your body really doesn't see it as a priority, because it's actually not that debilitating. And even when you are running, yes, it's sore and it's irritating, but it very seldom gets to that point where it's so sore that actually you cannot run anymore. So the good news is that it's not something that should require lots of rest. Okay, I would cut back on the mileage. And I would cut back on the intensity while we treat it. But if you don't treat it, and that's the important message here, then you're going to struggle with it for months and months. So the first place I always start, hip flexor stretches, glute strengthening, and I would go and see a physiotherapist to help with the inflammation that's right there, and also so the physiotherapist can do an assessment and just make sure that that is actually the cause. I would go as far as say that 9 out of 10 iliotibial band syndromes are caused from a combination of overuse and very tight hip flexors. I actually refer to ITB as a lifestyle injury rather than a running injury. And if you can really get those hip flexors stretched and open, it's 9 out of 10 times it does solve the problem. There are other contributing factors like overtraining, and that's why it's also known as a novice injury. Poor shoes, poor mechanics. So go to a physiotherapist, get that inflammation treated, get to the heart of the actual problem. And honestly, you've suffered from ITB before, and when I got you to do the hip flexor stretches, it cleared up in 3 days. One day you had it, the next day you didn't have it. So really, if you hit the root cause, it's an injury that you can clear up really, really quickly.
Yeah, and it's exactly that, Lindsay. You mentioned being a lifestyle sort of injury as opposed to a straight-up running injury. And for a lot of people who are office-bound, who sit all day and are in front of their desk, they often have very sort of closed up you talk about hips and pelvis and that sort of thing. And for me, it was a case of I was spending a lot of time on the bike. I was training for my first Ironman when it really hit me. And that's exactly what it is, as you said. Yeah,
and I was, while you were talking, I wanted to say that while cycling is great cross-training, and we advocate it here at Coach Parry, if you are doing a lot of cycling and cross-training, then it's really important that you stretch your hip flexors, because being in that hunched-up position on your bike for a couple of hours a week definitely puts you at greater risk to ITB.
And this is the masochist in me. Does foam rolling help with ITB?
So look, the jury's out a little bit on foam rolling per se, but massage does work, and foam rolling is a type of massage. So for this kind of injury, and particularly where it is, it's quite hard to get the right kind of pressure on there. So what normally works better is to get a golf ball in there, or if you have like a good old baking rolling pin, get in there with the rolling pin. But yeah, for those type of, and for really releasing those hip flexors, I recommend physiotherapy.
Thanks for joining us on this video. Don't forget, if you don't want to miss any of these videos that we put out, hit the subscribe button over here. You can catch our latest video over here, and one of our most popular is over here. And also, if you want to shave 10 minutes off your PB, all you need to do is download our free strength training program. You can get that right here.